This is SN Studios, and today we take you deep into a story whispered for decades across Burnley, Bradford, Oldham, Manchester, Salford, and even the travelling camps of Ireland. The names Fayaz Khan and Wakar Khan, known across the northwest as Rocky Khan, two men whose influence crossed communities, counties, and countries in Lancashire. The Khan name carried weight, real weight. Fayaz and Rocky weren't gangsters, weren't bullies. They were what the old school called true villains, men who stood for fairness, honour, and respect. They were loved in the Asian community, the white community, mosques, churches, travelling camps, businesses, nightclubs. Everywhere their names were spoken with reverence. Shakira Khan, who is a Love Island star, is the granddaughter of Fayaz Khan and daughter of Shiraz Khan. The Khan family have a huge name in Lancashire. Fayaz and Rocky Khan were linked up across England and Ireland. They were not to be messed with. Their respect in the travelling community was unmatched. Fayaz was always the main man, the one people called when no one else could handle a situation. He wasn't feared because he bullied. He was feared because he was fair and unstoppable. In 1990, at the age of 31, Fayaz Khan received his first jail sentence, a total of 3 years, after an incident involving two well-known troublemakers from Burnley, Jerry Moore and his close friend Leon, also known as Leon the Lion. 6 months before the incident, Fayaz and Leon had a one-on-one straightener, where Fayaz knocked Leon out clean. Leon never forgot that loss. Later, Jerry and Leon confronted Fayaz in a club, leading to a one-on-one fight between Fayaz and Jerry. Fayaz knocked Jerry out and bit part of his ear during the clash, a moment that spread across Burnley within hours. A week after the fight, Fayaz was driving through town when he saw Jerry, Leon, and around 20 of their mates gathered outside a pub. Tension rose instantly. The group was loud, aggressive, and ready for a confrontation. As the situation escalated, Fayaz's car struck both Jerry and Leon. Jerry survived but suffered lasting injuries that he still lives with today. Leon, however, passed away later due to brain injuries, and the case went straight to court. Fayaz was arrested shortly after and received a 3-year prison sentence, marking the first time he had ever been jailed. Fayaz and Rocky Khan's nephew was Jud Daniels, known across the city of Bradford as Jud, grew up under their wing. Jud became one of the most feared and respected figures ever to rise from Bradford, half Irish, half Pakistani. His roots ran deep in two worlds and both respected him. He linked heavily with the travelling community, moving in circles where respect was earned by courage, loyalty, and the strength of one's hands. Jud was the older brother to Raymond, Johnny Daniels, Mark Davey, and cousin to Dickie Daniels. In every street whisper, every backroom conversation, one truth stood above all. Jud was the main man, he was the head of the family. A bare-knuckle fighter with a reputation that stretched up and down the country. Jud's name carried weight. Heavy weight, Jud's younger brother, Johnny Daniels, had his own reputation. A serious figure in his day, not to be taken lightly. Johnny's life took a violent turn in 2009, when he was handed a long 13-year sentence for leading a gang of 4 involved in abduction, torture, and unlawful killing. But long before that, the streets were already rumbling. The extended family web included Maggie Khan, cousin to both Fayaz and Rocky, and connected in complicated ways to the Daniels family. Despite the blood ties, disputes were never far away. One major spark came when Raymond Daniels and Maggie Khan fell out over drug money. Tension rose fast, and before long, Maggie found himself in a one-on-one fight with the Daniels' close friend James Fletcher. Fletcher got the better of Maggie that day, and the city felt the shift. But Bradford never lets a feud end clean. In June 2007, Fletcher was shot in the leg after a masked gunman stormed into his flat. The gun jammed, Fletcher fought back, and ended up wounded. 2 months later, in August 2007, Maggie Khan was shot in the abdomen outside his girlfriend's house in Bingley by another masked gunman. Rumours spread fast. Johnny Daniels had a hand in the attempt on Maggie's life. The feud turned into a cycle. A year later, Maggie allegedly retaliated, firing shots at a car Johnny was in after learning of Johnny's involvement. The streets were restless. The families were divided. In 2009, the tension exploded again. Jud Daniels confronted Maggie Khan's younger brother, Imi Rehman, inside a shop in Bradford and beat him badly. Word travelled fast. Maggie found out. Rage followed. He chased Raymond Daniels through the city, but Raymond slipped away. The confrontation shifted to Jud. Maggie drew a gun on him, but Jud wasn't the kind of man to freeze. He looked Maggie dead in the eyes and said, "Use it, or put it away, and fight me like a man." Maggie backed down. He knew he wasn't a match for Jud, not with fists, power, or presence. In the end, it was Fayaz and Rocky Khan who stepped in. They called both sides together, and the dispute was settled. The family ties were secured, for the moment. Another cousin tied into the web was Khalid Malik, a Bradford drug baron, once one of the biggest importers in the region. He ran networks that stretched from the Middle East to mainland Europe and back into the UK. He dealt not in small shipments, but in mountain-sized quantities, the kind of volume only someone with deep connections and deeper pockets could handle. In 2005, Khalid Malik was jailed for 25 years for plotting to flood the Bradford district with 130 kilograms of heroin, a street value of £7 million. When Jud had disputes with Khalid Malik, it was Rocky Khan who made sure things were sorted between them. Years later, Khalid Malik would walk free and still visit Fayaz and Rocky in Burnley, keeping old family bonds alive. Jud Daniels was surrounded by his uncles, Fayaz and Rocky Khan. They didn't raise him as a nephew. They raised him like one of their own. He travelled with them, learned from them, fought beside them. Jud loved Fayaz dearly, and wherever the uncles went, through Ireland, Europe, the UK, they brought Jud Daniels with them. Among Irish travellers across Denmark, Holland, Germany, and the Pashtun tribes of Pakistan, Fayaz was known as a true gentleman and a formidable force. The Bradshaw brothers, Jeff Slater, Mick Cookson, Jerry, Meggie, and Khalid Malik. Everyone respected him. Fayaz was a one-man army. He never needed anyone, yet everyone needed him. Jud Daniels' father trusted Fayaz and Rocky with everything. From the family money exchange shop on Lum Lane to the businesses the Daniels ran across Bradford. Whenever trouble rose, the brothers handled it. On 24th June 2010, at only 43 years old, Jud Daniels passed away. His death shook the family to its foundation. The Bradford legend was gone. There was another man, cut from the same cloth as Jud, a feared, well-known street fighter from Oldham named Aziz, a bare-knuckle boxer with a serious reputation. Stories followed him everywhere. People said he once fought 5 men at once in the Tall Trees Club in Newcastle and handled all of them on his own. He was solid, respected, and one of the toughest around. But everything changed the day he crossed paths with the man himself, Fayaz Khan. Fayaz offered him a straightener, a fair one-on-one. No weapons, no nonsense. Aziz, who never backed down from anyone, looked straight at Fayaz and said, "You're my uncle, my role model. I can't go toe-to-toe with you." He refused out of pure respect, not fear. Fayaz had made the offer publicly, in Burnley, in front of many witnesses, including Jud Daniels and Ron Doherty, and again later in Wassa, Pakistan, deep within the Pashtun tribes. Each time, Aziz stepped back. He didn't want anything to do with going against the Rocky brothers. Aziz even went around telling people Fayaz Khan was his uncle, even though they weren't related by blood. He simply saw Fayaz as the man he looked up to, a real example for the entire Northwest. Later, when Aziz had trouble with a black belt fighter, it was Fayaz who stepped in. He fought on Aziz's behalf and walked away victorious, showing why men across Britain and Ireland respected him. Fayaz set the standard for fairness. He was always a gentleman, and the men of Lancashire, the surrounding towns, Cork in Ireland, they held deep respect for him. When major names had problems, they called Fayaz. Piano, Black Tony, Chief Shahid, Bradshaw Brothers, Mick Moore, Mick Cookson, Jeff Slater, Gervais Daniels, Durkins, the Dohertys, Maxingdale Travellers families, Big Aziz, Oldham, Meggie, Khalid. Everyone loved him. In 1995, Black Tony called Fayaz to Blueberries. Nightclub in Nelson, trouble had broken out. Fayaz stepped in and fought 4 men for Tony, dealing with the situation cleanly, fairly, and without charging a penny. Then came the infamous incident with Jerry, a bully who went around taxing innocent businesses, taxi firms, and clubs. Fayaz confronted him inside a Burnley club with around 30 witnesses watching. The moment Fayaz walked in, the entire place went silent. They went at it for 5 minutes. Jerry ended up being carried out on a stretcher. Many witnesses later said Fayaz tore his ear off, and it had to be stitched back on. Even 8 bouncers who tried to step in got knocked out cold by Fayaz had a lot of people shook. Gangsters across the northwest were under manners when his name was mentioned. Jud's father relied on him heavily at the money exchange shop on Lum Lane, especially when big business deals got heated. When Bradford problems spiraled out of control, people called for Fayaz, and things calmed instantly. Businessmen like Mick Cookson, with clubs across Blackpool and Burnley, Jeff Slater and Penn Doherty of Ireland kept him close. Fayaz was never a bully. He looked after people. Always fair, always firm. He had a mind that burned hot, something or close to schizophrenia. Quick to ignite, but he kept to himself. Nobody crossed him without paying the price. He set the foundations for the community, and the legacy continues through the Khan family, especially with Shakira Khan. But everyone knows the truth. Fayaz was the peace figure for all communities. He holds the title of the main uncle, the one at the root of everything. Every big name across Northwest and beyond saluted him. The Khan brothers were always called when problems were too big for others to solve. Many times Jud dealt with gangsters in Bradford, but when situations escalated, the call would go out, "Get Uncle Fayaz." And every time Fayaz delivered, Jeff Slater and Mick Cookson, well known across Burnley, have always held Fayaz in the highest regard. Before all the stories, before the reputation, before the respect across the Northwest, there was a young Fayaz Khan locked up in Manchester Strangeways between 1980 and 1985. Those years shaped him. He was padded up with serious gangsters, London South East firms, Manchester lads, crews from all over the UK, even the Denmark brothers. But even in one of the toughest prisons in the country, surrounded by the hardest of the hard, one thing never changed. Fayaz was never a bully. He carried himself like a gentleman, a real gem for every community in the Northwest. Back in the day, Lancashire, Burnley and parts of Ireland were full of extortion. Club owners were under pressure. Heavy crews from down south and Ireland tried moving in, demanding tens of thousands a month. But everything changed when the Khan brothers stepped onto the scene. People like Mick Cookson, Terry, Max and Penn Doherty of Salford, and Black Tony, who even got his license through Fayaz, all leaned on him when situations got dangerous. These weren't small names. These were major nightclub and pub owners across the UK. And every single time, Fayaz sorted it. No payment, no charge, just fairness. Once the Khan brothers arrived, no one dared to trouble any club in the Northwest. The Lancashire riots were raging, fueled by far-right groups. At the centre stood Martin Webster, a leader of the National Front. It took one man to walk in and stop the fire, Fayaz Khan. What started as confrontation turned into respect. Webster and other NF leaders became close to Fayaz because he wasn't about gang politics. He was about peace, fairness, and resolving what others couldn't. England, Ireland, both sides trusted him to settle major disputes. Places like the big SPA pubs and the toughest nightclubs across Lancashire always had a gem protecting them. Fayaz and Rocky Jeff, Terry, the Bradshaw brothers, Miggy, Black Tony, owner of Tim Hortons now, Gervais, the Doherty family from Padiham, all walked into clubs and proudly said, "He is our uncle, he is our cousin, he is our man." That name alone meant safety. Fayaz stopped serious extortion crews demanding £30,000 a month. He stopped outsiders trying to take control. Every bouncer, every doorman, every big owner saluted him. And Fayaz always said one thing. The elder Dohertys, some of the hardest men from Salford and Padiham, openly said Fayaz Khan was the man nobody up north, no matter their colour or creed, stepped up to him and survived it. The circulation bar in the 80s and 90s was the roughest spot in Burnley. Fayaz walked in and laid out everyone who tried it. Anyone who crossed him, they paid the price, full stop. He protected businesses, recovered money, and kept the biggest nightclubs safe. There was never a need to name drop, because all the big owners already knew who saved them. Ron Doherty, grandson of Penn Doherty, and the Maxingdale travelling community always said, Fayaz is our true king, a legend. Maxingdale and the Dohertys are the biggest names in Salford. Their family roots in Cork, Ireland, match the Khans through respect, bravery and loyalty old-time Max, from 87, used to tell everyone. When Blue from Croydon ripped him for £120,000, it was Fayaz who recovered every penny, that included. Nobody else in Britain could have done it. Maxingdale Max bowed to no man, but he saluted Fayaz Khan. Up north, Lancashire, Yorkshire, Teesside, Fayaz was easily the most formidable gypsies, travellers, families from Pendleton, Eccles, Clifton Green, all respected him. He put down the best of them, but he was never a bully, he stood for respect. Burnley, Salford, Manchester, Bury, Oldham, Bradford, Blackpool, Cork. Wherever he walked, he was recognised as a true gem. Fayaz's sons, Shiraz and Fiz, carried the same honour. Known across Burnley and beyond, not for violence, but for being real men, fair people, the way their father raised them. Fayaz Khan had a large family who loved him and carried his legacy with honour. This is SN Studios. Like, share and subscribe.